Okay, I feel afraid to ask this, but what are the Wiggles, Ammar?
The Wiggles are the Australian kids version of the Beatles. That's
Oh,
one way to describe it.
oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of, I'm assuming? How do you know about them?
My daughter is a fan, so now I know all the words, and I hate it because I love it so much.
Oz, have you been, are they real or are they cartoons?
They're real human beings, but I think
Okay.
they also have a cartoon line.
Okay.
They've got books. Yeah,
They've gone
and it's like a
global. Yeah.
multi-generational thing, right? Like people are rotating in and out of the crew.
Yeah, it was like they started off like I think the story was it was some 80s rock band dudes who decided to just start doing this because someone they knew had like a developmental disability and they're like, oh, let's like it's fun to sing music for kids or something. And then it evolved from that into like the most recent cast is like professional ballet dancers and whatever. So it's a little bit more, I would say, commercialized than the roots.
They sold out.
They sold out, yeah.
Okay, I'm into it. I'm bookmarking it. This will be in the show notes. Important first
Good.
bullet in the show notes.
What, Emma? What have you been up to other than watching the Wiggles with your daughter?
I've been building a startup and trying to run away from it at the same time.
Tell us about it.
So yeah,
Why building? Why running?
so it's I'm building Malla, which is just a brief backstory. In 2015, I realized I had chronic gut issues that were preventing me from being able to eat certain foods. Like I was sleeping poorly. I'm not an anxious person, but my anxiety spiked. Um, my nails and my skin started peeling. It was not fun. And I went to a doctor and they basically were like, get on some antibiotics. And I was like, that sounds like a bunch of phooey. And so I got a second opinion and they happened to be a functional medicine practitioner. And they essentially just did a lab test. They put me on an elimination protocol of just boiled chicken and some rice
Hmm.
and slowly started reintroducing food. And we realized that while I'm not celiac, there's definitely something about like store-bought breads or eating breads or pastas while out with like dubious, food quality that was causing me inflammation and issues. So as soon as I cut that out, I dropped like 15 pounds without even thinking about it. And my energy levels just went through the roof. And so, um, yeah, and I met a guy many years later who went through a very similar journey, and he was building a functional medicine startup to bring the costs of it down. And we went in on it in early 2023. So it hasn't been that long, but that's what we're into. We're connecting people with functional practitioners who can give that same experience to other people.
I'm not totally following functional. What does the functional mean?
All right, here we go. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's horrible branding. Yeah,
Okay.
like I think if you want to go deep into that rabbit hole, I think what has stuck lately has been longevity medicine, which kind of
Okay.
touches on some of these same things.
Yeah.
But essentially, functional medicine, you can call it holistic medicine, you can call it root cause care. It largely consists of three things, and the broader goal is to treat chronic illness without using medication. So the first prong is let's do specialty lab testing where we can look really in depth at different biomarkers and how they're doing and stuff like that. The second is let's use uh, protocols that are very like if you haven't encountered them before, they're a little bit woo-woo, but they're very rooted in like experience and being able to notice changes yourself, such as like, oh, like take magnesium like 3 hours before bedtime, have a wind down ritual. Do this when you wake up, like cut out caffeine before a certain time. Those are like the very like beginning ones. And then as you get deeper, there's stuff like here's a gut cleanse, here's a nervous system reset, and stuff
Cool.
like that. So it's very much rooted in like changing your lifestyle and diet first and foremost with some supplementation and other modalities before you even touch medication. So
So this all sounds great. Why are you running away from the startup?
Because when you're doing a startup, it demands so much of your time that it makes you unhealthy. And so for me, it actually puts me in this interesting position where it's like I'm building a health startup, and yet there's so many aspects of building this that almost demand you to be unhealthy. So it's
Mm.
like setting really strong boundaries on when you're on and when you're, deloading. Uh, that has been like my version of running away, so to speak.
Do you feel that it's substantially different to being a software engineer who like does the same number of hours as the founder, or like comparing it to prior roles that you've had, engineering management, like that's stressful too, right? Doesn't that also?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think it's actually my own. I mean, I can only speak about my own experience, so I can't really generalize, but I'm curious how this hits with you guys. Is like, um, I had this habit of coding in a hole, right? You like figure out what you're gonna do, and you're just like fucking zoned in, almost as if like you can't breathe. I even actually started tracking it with my Oura ring. Like when if I'm not paying attention and I'm doing,
You're functionally dead while you're coding.
yeah.
They're saying, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like your stress levels go up, your breathing gets shallow. Like everything that you could possibly think about as like markers of health seem to suffer when you're in that state of like uh almost like not breathing or
But isn't
breathing.
that flow? We're always talking about flow on this show. Like, don't you want to be plugged into the matrix and like just in the zone? And when we talk about that book, it's like people look back on that time. I was happiest when I was plugged into that flow. It sounds like you had a different approach to dealing with your flow state, Ammar.
Well, there's flow state that I experienced with Oz at Bradfield, which was
Okay.
like make yourself a little espresso, like have a cup of coffee with your friends, sit down and calmly try to solve the problem. If you hit a wall, go for a walk, come back. That's flow, I think. Experientially, that's flow. It's hard and it's all consuming, but your body is still part of the equation. This startup hacker grind is completely disembodied, and it's all like my brain, my text editor, and my like UI or like whatever like terminal I'm using. And like it's a different experience for sure.
Well, yeah, I wondered that. Like, can you see that kind of thing physiologically? Like, if you took the flow exemplars of like the violinist and the surgeon and the rock climber or something. They're all in flow while they're doing their activity. Some of them are like the rock climber is very physical. The violinist is not disembodied, right? The surgeon is not disembodied either. But like we're also typing. Uh, I mean, is there something physiologically different about the degree to which you're using your body during this activity?
That's a good question. I'm actually figuring this out as we talk right now. It might even be just I even look at like, these athletes who are at the way extremes like Kobe, and he was like, oh, I wake up at 4 a.m., train 4 to 6. Then I go home and take a break, and then I come back at 8 to 10, right? But everyone focuses on how much work they're doing, and they don't notice that he's just completely unplugging in between those sessions. And I'm realizing like with code, unless if you're careful, you can go what anywhere from 6 to 8 or 10 hours, depending on how insane you are, just completely zoned in. And then you go to sleep in this like haggard state and you do it again. You don't have that opportunity to just deload. And I think that is probably part of the problem that I
For the
think if you
startup.
talk to athletes, to artists, they would say, yeah, you need to have that dedicated deload time.
Do you think you are missing that because of the responsibility of like this thing, I have to keep this thing afloat, or I have to find the next round of funding, or there's a team? Is it these additional stressors in the background that are affecting the physiological reaction to the work?
Oh, maybe, but I also think it's just my attitude towards the work, which
Okay.
is just like grind, grind, grind. And because I mean, it's been something that I've been working on for the past few months. And I've noticed a difference in my quality of work, the quality of my own life, the quality of like even thoughts and ideas and ways of building from just being like, what was that Ernest Hemingway quote? That was something like you should like stop your work at the end of every day when you feel like you have more to put in.
Yeah, when you're writing, they always say cut yourself off where you know what the next paragraph's going to be so that you can like dive back in and do that.
Yeah.
I mean, he
It's
obviously wrote it more eloquently than I phrased it, but it is that idea.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I wonder if that it's some of that here is like um not just draining yourself entirely, feeling a little bit short-term unproductive so that you can be long-term more effective.
Ammar, I'm like feeling depressed. Where's the joy in this process? I know there's probably like nuggets of like, okay, we got this customer feedback or something, or I built this cool feature or something like that. Are you finding these moments of pockets of joy right now?
Yeah, I love it. It's so
Okay.
much fun.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the most fun I've ever had,
Really?
honestly.
Okay. Sick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because it's
I
like
think
the
it's
pitch so far, the grind thing, I'm not connecting the grind to this is the most fun I've ever had.
no, I mean the fun is this is all just self dis someone's called it like the personal discovery engine. It's
Mm.
like it requires so much of you. And so it starts bringing up all of the good and bad habits that you have. Like I have a lifelong habit of just always being stoked, like just always being excited and pumped. But then when that starts wearing out, or you have other responsibilities, or you need to like just put it down for a little bit so you can not so you can come back the next day and have the same kind of joy and energy. It's like, okay, like I need to confront this. I need to um, really manage my energy better. And it's because it's not just a matter of like cognitive stuff. It's like your actual body is involved here too.
Mm.
It reminds me a little bit of something that Miles would talk about a bit as like a very common cause of anxiety for people where their authority doesn't match their responsibility. I'm trying to like reconcile this, what we've been talking about, with the fact that some people can code for 60 hours a week for their entire careers and love it, and other people do half as much and burn out. And some people like really take to being a founder, and some people struggle with that a lot. Vice versa, some people work well as employees, and other people in ostensibly the same position don't. And maybe this is an aspect of it where it's like if somebody feels like they have a responsibility, but they are not in a position where they can actually carry that out within an organization, then that is an instant cause of anxiety, where it's like now you can work at something, and in a way, the harder you work, the worse it is. Because like the more distance you're creating between what you're trying to do and what is like evident is the limit of your capabilities there.
Oh man,
Charlie.
this made me think of when I was working at Morgan Stanley in investment banking, my first job. We would be in the bullpen, and you'd have your staffer, who was this like vice president or something, who sat outside the bullpen, and we'd all have our various projects. But if I was to work efficiently and finish my work early and like, oh, I'm done with my assignment, I can go home at 7 o'clock. You are the first person to get the next big project. And I had no power over what project I was going to get. So what the incentive that created was to do your projects and hit your deadlines, but as slowly as possible. And it was a horrible feeling to know like I could be more efficient. I could go breathe fresh air. But if I do that, if I allow myself to get away, they're going to nab me with something else. So, yeah, I'm glad that phase is over. Good Lord.
Being your own boss in that way, like gives you that extra, because it's when you have another boss, that is a major determinant of what your responsibilities are, and also what your authority is, right? It's like we want you to do this, and we are giving you the budget to do something else. It's like they're determining both the thing you're meant to do and the like capability you have to do that. Like you can't hire or fire the people you want, but we also want you to do this specific thing. if you're the founder, you get to determine, I think, both those things in a way where you can now make it a positive experience where your effort is rewarded and you want to put more effort in and you're not going to burn out because your effort is directed in a way that you want. Now, obviously, there are other determining factors like your investors, your customers, even the industry that you've chosen to go into, what your co-founders' capabilities are, who your early employees are. But compared to having a job, maybe this is why you're enjoying it more and more.
Yeah, I love it. It's so much fun. Well, I would say it's actually fascinating to think about this is that the two things that you brought up that or the thing that you brought up that I think of now is one is, well, when you're your own boss, you're responding to the other boss, which is that voice in your head. And so, yeah, the boss goes away externally, but then the boss changes to being the one that brings those kind of, patterns of how you view your work as a kid, as an adolescent, as a young adult. And now you have to have that real hard conversation. For example, my dad, he's an incredible doctor. He's worked 80-hour weeks for the past 30 years, solo practice, he's a legend. This is what I've seen my entire life of what it takes to do your own thing and be passionate about it and just like put in hours and hours and hours, right? And but he's tired all the time, and of course, intellectually, I know that that's not the way to do it, but that's what I grew up seeing, and it worked really well when I broke into the software industry. Just using hours as a forcing function to learn and to like get over any imposter syndrome I have. But now, I have the startup, I have a kid, I have my wife, I have other things happening outside. And just that same tactic doesn't work anymore. And so it's constant like learning to negotiate and accept with that voice. And you don't think that makes a difference with how you write code, but it really does.
Why do you think
But
founders will start another company after they've built a company for a long time and sold it? Or, let's imagine it's the happy scenario where you've done something well. I feel like I see a lot of times they go back to the well. What does that mean to you? Do you envision that for yourself?
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I have no idea. This is my first time.
Okay.
Ask me in like a decade. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sure Oz has some thoughts on that one.
I don't know. My take is it seems like it's changing you. And like I can never do anything else, but then you're working towards something, you achieve it, and you're like, oh shit, I'm here. I'm at the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, hopefully. Uh, and I didn't even feel like you want the next pot of gold. It's just I just want to be on the rainbow again. I don't know. It's like journey is the destination is what I'm feeling, and I feel like your entire body physiologically is changing. That you've now adapted to this, and you can't really do anything else. I don't know. Do you see another? Similarly, I don't see a lot of founders go back and then be like working for somebody again. I feel like Ammar, you've like evolved as a Pokemon in some way, and I don't know that you're going to go back. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like, I reassure my wife sometimes, like, don't worry, my next job after this one will be at like Google or something. And she just rolls her eyes. She's like, no, not a chance.
Yeah, yeah,
why does that feel like reassurance?
Um, well, everyone brings different backgrounds to the table. Like I grew up with a dad who ran his own practice, and this just that's always been what I've always wanted to do is like just do my own thing.
Mhm.
Whether it's with people that I admire next to me, like my co-founder, or doing it on my own. Whereas with a lot of other people, they've seen, working for a large company that has provides stability, pathways for training and growth as the epitome. For a while, I would just kind of like snub my nose at that and be like, oh, like insert, like, uh, whatever bad word that you can call someone for that in there. But now I'm just like, okay, no, everyone has kind of different paths through this, Like I personally don't think I would want to work for a big company, but I say that now. What happens if we have another kid? Or what happens if my needs change or my family's needs change? Or if I'm just burned out and I just need something a little bit more structured? Who knows?
What was your favorite thing that you did other than being a founder? Like, did you have a hint through your career that like a certain kind of job or a certain kind of set of responsibilities would lead you to more independent work?
Huh, good question.
Or were you just
Um,
like buying your time, waiting for
I
the
was not
opportunity?
intentional at all. I
Mm.
just, I think it was more, um, in retrospect, I just did what seemed like a really good use of time. That was really fun. I think I've been low-key optimizing for not being pigeonholed as an engineer. So just to backtrack a little bit, growing up, I did a lot of art, played a lot of sports, played a lot of music. And I loved the act of building something from scratch, whatever it was, and being involved in the full aspect of making something, everything from the visuals down to like the specific nitty-gritty. And when I learned how to code with you and with Miles, um, that itch was scratched so strongly that I just wanted to go have the Bradfield experience with everything. So during the pandemic, I learned how to paint. Over the years, I was, spending nights and evenings learning how to do design. Um, yeah, I was doing some jazz piano stuff too. It's just like I just love finding crafts that let me just end to end express myself, no matter what it is. That's the itch that startups scratches for me. It's so cool because it's like one of the only ways where you can get paid really well to have an earnest curiosity about something, and you just go at it and you figure it out and you get rewarded for it.
It's funny that you're not the first person to do this, where it's like, particularly when, I was really in the early days of Bradfield thinking like it'd be great to see a lot of success of students along a particular trajectory that I had in mind. And instead of being really excited about computing, they got really excited about learning. It's
Mm.
like, I had a good experience learning about computing. I will stop doing computing, or I will not project myself in the direction that this was designed for. It's like if someone went to a music school or something, and they were like, oh, I've really had a great time learning about music, and I will never play my instrument again. I will go and do something. And not that you did that, but it's like I've seen a number of times people get a thrill of going from where they are to somewhere that they couldn't imagine they'd be in that particular skill. And rather than saying, I will now use that skill, they're like, I want to experience that thing again. I've seen that a number of times.
Well, you know what it is? It's a way of seeing, right? Like it's what learning how to program with you guys, it made me be like, oh my God, you can just break things down conceptually and understand things. So you can literally look underneath the hood at everything here. It's not
So
magic.
what was the Bradfield approach that you then took to painting? What was the distillation of that learning style? I think I have my own opinion of what it might be, but it seems like it worked effectively for you. So how did you apply that to these other disciplines?
Yeah, I mean, my experience of the Bradfield approach was theory meets practice all day, every day, self-contained little projects that give you a teaser as to how deep it goes, but creates a sense of accomplishment at doing something you couldn't ever imagine yourself doing, but setting up guardrails so that you can fuck up and, find your way eventually. That's what it was similar with painting, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar with it's finding interesting problems that you can solve seems to be what, and I feel like Oz, you've reflected that in CS Primer in a very direct way. But how would you describe the learning style, Oz, that you took from Bradfield into CS Primer? Is there a Oz sentence or two theory of learning that you're working with right now?
Yeah, I mean there are some themes. I think one of the major things that I try to do is reset everybody's expectations around what they are capable of themselves.
Mm.
So this is like just a very a major point of leverage or like a high order bit. Whereas like I could teach you a concrete skill that you've come to me saying that you want to learn, or I could show you that there's another world out there. Like you can pull back this abstraction, you can pop the hood of the car or whatever, and you are capable of this thing. If you want to be, you can do this other thing. And so when people take this to other places, that's very exciting as well. Whereas like I'm showing you how to look behind the system call interface or to, read packets in Wireshark or whatever, and you're doing this in some totally different domain. You're reverse engineering some electronic device or whatever. It's like not specifically what I taught you about, but there was like a resetting of expectations of oneself that enabled that.
Cool.
So that's a major theme. But yeah, in terms of like the pragmatics of how you actually do that, like you can't just tell people, hey, you're capable of so much more than you believe. I think the pragmatic way to do that is to give people projects that feel just a little bit beyond what they are capable of, and then just like the basic tools for doing that, getting that positive feedback loop of like, I can do this. I did in fact do this. Like we did in fact pop the hood, change the oil, whatever. And I just didn't think that I could change the oil of my own car. I always took my car in to be serviced, and we did this very basic thing of servicing the car. And I'm not a mechanic, but like I could see how this first barrier to me being a mechanic has been lifted. I am now capable of doing this thing. Like you need to actually do that and do the thing. It needs to be well calibrated. You can't say, let's strip apart the engine and rebuild it as the first exercise. The first exercise is change the oil. Um, it's not like let's build a car as the first thing, even if you're planting the seeds of like you could build your own car. There's a Substack that I'm following now that I'm excited about because I'm into homeschooling of a homeschooling dad. Homeschooling dads are extremely rare. This homeschooling dad, he had his son, who I think is 8 or 9, tell him that he wanted to build a plane. It's like, Dad, the dad's like, what should we do, with our homeschooling? Should we focus on arithmetic? It would be good to learn Latin or something. And the kid's like, let's build a plane. And the dad's like, all right, I guess this is what we're
Oh
doing.
man.
We're building a plane. And so that they're like chipping away at building a plane together. Anyway, I'm rambling now, but
I want to share, if I can be so self-aggrandizing as to share a blog post I wrote that I feel like didn't get enough attention from the people I sent it to, which you guys were probably involved. I'll just share this, which I think is what you're talking about, Oz. And I want to see if you can tell me if I was onto something. Allow for a month. Yeah. So I wrote this post about the 6 levels of interaction with the system. Um, and it's like, I don't know how to use the system. I can use it. I can monitor it. I could maintain it. I could repair it and rebuild it. And it's sort of like, how deep down this spike do you go? And like some things I'm just going to use and never know how they work. Some things at least be able to know that this thing needs an oil change. Maybe I can even change the oil. Maybe I can eventually like repair that thing. Maybe I could build it from scratch. But in a career, in a life, you're going to pick how deep you go down one of these areas. And I don't know, I feel like the way you're describing the system calls and stuff using the computer, you're just slowly pulling things away and getting deeper to the nucleus of the thing. And that feels like I don't know what the point of this blog post was other than making this colorful thing, but maybe this is an approach for learning that that it reflects what you're doing with CS Primer.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen this one.
Okay. Yeah.
Now that I know about it, I'll try.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that framing because it's like the whole point of we keep going back to Donald Knuth's answer to what's the most important thing in computer science, and it is abstraction. It's like the whole point of what we're doing is to build layers of indirection so that we don't have to think about what's behind it. Like we're trying to build good abstractions so that some people can have a bunch of extra leverage without having to read the disassembly. But my entire like educational angle has been you can read the disassembly. Like there is such a thing, and here's how to do it. So it's like to have abstraction, but to be able to look behind it and to be able to judge for oneself whether at this point in time one ought to look behind it. Like, do you keep it as an abstraction? Do you like, are you okay with it being a black box and just use it? You focus on like the high level task at hand, or is this now a time to open it up, understand it, rebuild it, to be able to like navigate that up and down, I think, with a positive psychology, both of like confidence of like, I can do this if I want to, and humility of like, wow, what would it take to do this? Or like, I am glad that someone else has done this. I think that's a major theme.
And then I
Amar,
would
what are
add
you?
a third to that, which is, or fourth, is the sense of wonder, where you yourself not really in the picture anymore. It's like, oh, like I see this with my daughter all the time. Like she'll find like, there's 10 ways she could do something, and nine of them are ones that are uh like condoned by me, and she'll find the one way that I just don't want her to do it. But it's just so exciting and like wondrous for her that like she did this thing, let's say with her shoe, or the thing that she wasn't supposed to touch on the ledge of the table. And the sound it makes, the way that it bounces, the way that it moves, it's not even necessarily that, oh, I did that. It's like, whoa, like that thing did that thing. And I feel like sometimes that's missing from modern education, where everything kind of feels like it's in service of something that will help you. But when I see my daughter, and then just other kids in general, like a lot of it is just like, oh, this is so cool. Like this didn't have to exist, and it does, and now I get to be part of it.
Well, I think feature development and day-to-day coding work has that in so many little ways. Like if I have a spec for something and I can bring it to life, even if it's a little button that does nothing, I'm so fucking happy when that happens. And I'm always the person who's like, I post in Slack, I'm like, this is ready. Click it. It feels so good. And I love that about coding. Even if you're in a feature factory, you can find wonder in taking something, bringing it to life and showing it to people. And your example with your daughter, I had literally the same thing this morning. Her little watering can knocked over. She knocked it over. It's like, you pick that up. And she didn't want to do it. And she found a way to pick it up with her stomach. And I did like how I don't even understand physically how that happened. And I was holding back laughter the entire time. And then she's just like pushing it up against the wall. And she did it. I was like, okay, I guess that's, you win. It's
I mean,
amazing.
when people talk about, you guys have heard the phrase zone of proximal development, this
Mhm.
Vygotsky modeling of like, we learn best at this interface between what we're capable of and what we're not capable of. Like, you need to be exposed to novelty, and we know this idea, yeah.
Mhm.
Like when people hear that, they think about like, oh, if the kid is able to multiply two-digit numbers, but not three-digit numbers, like the zone of proximal development is between 2 and 3 digits, whatever. But actually, it's things like, I haven't picked up a watering can with my belly before. Like that's new. Or like, I'm not meant to run with the scissors. I know what it's like to walk with the scissors. In a way, like doing things that are a bit risky or a bit like outside of what you're meant to do is actually the zone of proximal development for the kid.
Yeah, my other pal is really into the best education. His idea about education, especially as a kid, is doing something slightly subversive is the best way to learn. Like, especially in the 90s on computers and shit you could do then. It just felt so good. And it's like, I shouldn't be on the computer lab at school, but I know if I sit at this seat, they've installed Doom on it. So if I get through my thing, I can do that and I can send it to, it's just these little things that you can do. I've learned, it just made you fall in love with it. And finding little things that are slightly subversive, go against what your parents want. Um, and I don't know, as a parent, it's like, should I be setting up little opportunities for her to be subvert? It's like, no, just let that shit happen because it will.
Yeah, just don't shut it down, I feel like.
Yeah.
Just like have the conversation with yourself about like, how bad is the hospital trip going to be? We have a venomous snake outside our house at the moment, like
Mhm.
probably literally right now because the sun's just come out. Every day it just comes out. It's called a red-bellied black snake, and it's like it's a feared snake in Australia, but it's also like it's there haven't been any recorded human fatalities. So my wife is like, we got to move this snake on. We got to like call the snake catcher, whatever. By the way, most people around us would just shoot the thing. So already we have like a more thoughtful, I think, response to it. My wife's like, we've got to call the snake catcher, move it away. We don't want the kids getting bitten. And to me, I'm doing the calculation of like, well, it is venomous. It hasn't killed anybody on record. Theoretically, it has enough venom to kill a child. Our kids know not to stick their hands into any holes. Is this is this the zone of proximal development in venomous snake interaction for a child? I mean, my kids are very like if anything, they're very cautious in a way where I see other kids like run off. And that's very much the way that they're learning by like running away from their parents and like jumping into the pond at the park. And the parents legitimately do need to chase them and like drag them out of the water, like for the kids' safety. And my kids are the opposite, where I'm like, is this, should we be pushing them to play with the snake or something? Um, but long story short, I think
Sounds like you're procrastinating.
procrastinating.
Yeah, you're
How so?
procrastinating on dealing with the snake.
On the snake.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we're just waiting. The problem with the snake is if you don't want to catch it yourself, there's also just a limited amount of time where it's out, where you got to call the guy.
Yeah.
If I go to homeschool dad Reddit and I see the post that's like how to catch a venomous snake, I know that'll be you.
Yeah, I mean that thought did occur to me as well. Like, wouldn't it be empowering if we looked up on YouTube how to catch a venomous snake? Although, society's against this kind of thing. I'm sure those videos are actually against the terms of service on YouTube too.
Well, as soon as you get rid of that snake, another one's going to fill the vacant hole, you know?
That's what I said as well.
Yeah.
That's what I said. And there are more venomous snakes that are like competitive in territory with these ones. So
It's tough, really tough. Are you, Ammar, are you going to go down the homeschooling route? Have you thought about that, or have you begun any early? I don't know. I actually don't know how old your kid is, but have you begun any
She is
attempt?
2 years
Two.
old.
Okay.
Charlie, you have how old is your kiddo?
3.5, and then I have a 7-month-old son.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
congrats. That's
Thanks.
awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I've done, I started doing one of the phonics books that Oz had written about, a direct instruction book on teaching your kid how to read in 100 lessons. And we're pretty stuck on lesson 12 or 13, and she's kind of gotten to the point where she knows probably like 10 sounds. She can sound out words, but she mainly just wants to get to the stories. But I've been kind of blown away. My whole realization with that was, which I've talked about before, is I never realized that you could learn to read earlier. I just assumed like when school told you could read, that's when you're supposed to learn to read. And there's no reason for that whatsoever. So encouraging it in some way has been really cool. I think I thought when I was going to be a parent that I would be like, okay, age 13, now we need to introduce checkers, or month 13, introduce checkers and be very vigilant about it. My take has been much more like relaxed and go with the flow, maybe because I'm really tired. Um, but it has been neat to sort of, we were talking about this last time, Oz, but like leaving things around, trying to encourage these things. I think I'm definitely not being as proactive as Oz has been, but it's been really satisfying. And then seeing what she can do is insane. She's reading words. She's 3.5. I know she could do more. There's just too many other tempting things around, but it's been fun. I don't know. What has been your take on how you're going to approach
So I
that
went
stuff?
to a Montessori school as a kid,
Okay.
and I didn't realize that it was kind of like a fake Montessori school, because now we sent my daughter to a real Montessori school. Apparently, there's like different accreditations. Like there's the American system that's like not as legit, and then there's like the international one that's like much more legit. And at this school, it's all about this whole concept that kids have an extremely absorbent mind where you just set the right conditions and they just figure it out. Like the craziest part for me was when we started sending my daughter to school a few months ago, at the end of August. She would only take a nap if I like rocked her, all that stuff, put her down cold into the crib. And then so after the first week of school, I asked her teacher how nap time is, and she was like, "Oh, she just rolls her nap mat out herself and puts herself to sleep." And I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, what the? How did you do that?" It's like, "Oh, it's the environment. They see all the other kids, so it's like this classroom has kids that are a little bit further ahead, age-wise and development-wise, and a little bit further behind. So they all kind of like teach each other and learn from each other. And so my daughter sees,
Are you still doing the sort of elaborate ritual at home though? Or has that changed?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
exactly. Exactly.
yeah, that's an argument for having more kids and having like a communal sleeping area. Yeah, but it's basically like they like just watch each other do stuff and they're like, "Oh, I can do that," and then they just do it themselves. It's wild. And recently, as we've been doing nighttime reading and stuff, my daughter Misha will actually start pointing out the words or what she thinks the words are and like asking what that means. It's almost like this natural urge to like, okay, now I've figured out that these pictures correspond to animals and them doing stuff. And now they're like reading, and these adults are reading and saying things, and I see these other symbols on here. Maybe now it's time to understand what that means. It's almost like this internal clock almost.
That's cool.
The crazy thing about that to me is that like the conventional system knows about this phenomenon, but it has become like a a part of the curriculum in this perverse way of like pre-reading, where now like uh, kids are taught to look at a book and open it and like read the left page or like point to the left page before the right page or something and point to the author's name. It's like, this is where the author's name should go and so on. It's like, okay, I see where this is coming from. Like kids before they're ready to read are ready to think about the fact that like, words have meaning and letters correspond to sounds and so on. But it's like these kids are now ready to actually read, and you're just getting to the point where you're teaching them that a book has an author and an illustrator or something. It's like, no, just teach them to read at this point, please. It's like they could have been in an environment where like this stuff was picked up naturally. They weren't, maybe, or some of them, many of them were. And now instead of reading, you're teaching pre-reading. It feels like
Yeah, and
now,
this system, like, have you heard of the Summerhill School?
no.
Oh, it's fascinating. It's I haven't looked it up in a while, but there's a book on it. It's a school in England. The whole premise was kids are not required to go to school to class, and the school is governed by the students. Of course, there's teachers and stuff, and it's I think uh, kindergarten through 12th grade. And the phenomenon that at least the author purports is a kid who has gone through normal schooling has had their intrinsic motivation beaten out of them. And so now they're used to external validation. So they come in to this school from maybe that setting and they spend maybe the first 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, in some cases, even like a year, not attending class. But maybe this is the marketing of it, but they're like, but without fail, almost every single student eventually gets over that hurdle and just voluntarily starts going to school. And these kids graduate from this school, become engineers, craftsmen of some sort. Like they're not bums, and it's just such a fascinating kind of live experiment on this, which is that like uh, part of the job is to kind of whether it's for kids or I think all the time about like my team for Malla at the startup is like how do we create this environment where people are actively looking for the next challenge and actively looking to learn and to grow and to kind of poke at the edges of things and see what happens.
How are you doing that?
Um, push to prod, baby.
Yeah. No meetings.
Very few, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're working on tightening this up more, but it's like making sure every single person feels like they can be world class at or on the path to becoming world class at one thing.
What
And
happens when commonly at startups, at software startups at least, there's a scenario where it's like this person is outgrowing the role or like the success or failure of the company is going to come from shipping features, and it kind of needs to be shipped quickly, and there's not that much of a priority on like the growth of the individual. It's you're like you just happen to be in a situation now where you're the best person to do this task. It's not the best task for the person, in terms of like their
Yeah.
growth or their capabilities. What do you do about situations like that?
I really don't know.
They get to write the prompt for ChatGPT.
Yeah.
No.
Well, then they come for your job. That's what happens.
Yeah, I mean that's not an uncommon thing. I mean, not like replace the founder, but it's like, okay, maybe you need to start your own company, or like, we're gonna wish you well at your next thing. But I wonder how much of a buffer there is as well in just being like, all right, um, it would be nice to get this out this week, but if you want to take 2 weeks to make it as good as you want it to be, like make it perform better than actually we need it to perform, like we will do that because we recognize that we want to keep you for the times where actually there is this very technically challenging thing, or where the performance is very important, or like maybe even next year, we're going to be able to like think more about security, whatever you think is not the priority right now. I wonder if founders could be a little bit more flexible in their, or like long term in their support of talent in that way.
Yeah, I mean, my bias is that I've only worked at early to mid-stage startups, so I think there's this transition moment that happens where maybe some of the so I think it depends on the types of challenges that are available and the types of challenges a person wants to seek out, and that might be largely a recruiting thing too, right? So as we've been, there's the one engineer that works with us. We spent a long time looking for him. Turns out he was just someone that I had known. Like actually, he had been the one interviewing me for a role that I'd interviewed for like a few years ago. Um, and we just spent 3 months talking every week about the kind of company we want to build, the what type of engineer will thrive at Malla, and kind of co-creating that role together. Either those conversations even helped me figure out exactly what I think Malla should be in terms of a culture. And for us, it was largely around like you're an engineer who really enjoys interfacing with customers and thinking through product and UX. It's not purely just engineering at scale problems, though those also are interesting. But if we were building not what we're building now, which is largely a marketplace with some telehealth and whatever wrapper around a few APIs. If we were building the lab test itself, where is a lot more hardcore engineering, we'd be looking for different types of people. And so maybe this individual probably would get bored faster because he's looking for certain types of challenges. But then we'd be looking for someone, it'd be a bottomless pit of other types of challenges.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I feel like I've done a poor job in the past of like finding that fit for people in a way, because you want to hire like the best of the pool. You don't necessarily want to say, hey, like this job actually doesn't demand as much right now as your talents are like capable of. Um, so I've had that as a failure mode for sure as a hiring manager.
Ammar, what's your like day in the life right now? Are you waking up at 4 like Kobe and hitting the gym? Like, is there a routine schedule?
Yeah, the routine is actually pretty chill,
Okay.
and I'm enjoying it quite a lot. It's like wake up, depending on the day, like having time to go for like a nice long walk outside, meditate a little bit, write a little bit, make lunch for my daughter while my wife gets her ready for school, drop her off at school, come back, get started, write some from 9 to 1, it's like just heads down code.
Cool.
From 1 to 2, it's the gym, if I'm not being a crazy man and ignoring my calendar. And then it's meetings, and then my kid comes home at 5 and we just have family time. It's amazing.
Sweet. So it's the whole company is heads down work in the morning. Is that the philosophy, or is that what you've just personally adapted or adopted?
I think it's a lot easier if you're doing something like engineering to have heads down time, because that's your contribution is easier to frame as write this code or like
Yeah.
solve this big fat problem. Now, my co-founder, he's doing a bunch of other different things. He's managing the marketing team. He's talking to our practitioners. He's talking to investors, etc. Our practitioner might be doing different things, but that is what we're like kind of striving for as a culture. It's like you have this period of time where you just are singularly focused on one thing. I haven't read this in a while, but I'm pretty sure Cal Newport writes very extensively about this stuff, right?
Yeah, I think maker's schedule and manager's schedule, I think could be
That's the Paul Graham
that's
framing.
Paul Graham. Okay. Sorry,
Yeah, I mean,
another thought leader.
yeah, I mean, Paul Graham also talks about how like you can only have one thing front of mind. Uh, like the second thing that you care about is going to be neglected. Um, and I worry about that with like being a parent and having other responsibilities. Like I think it for me just means that I can't um I shouldn't pretend that I can compete with people in certain domains where like they're electing to devote their entire lives to something, and have that front of mind, not just from 9 to 1 or whatever, but like absolutely nonstop all the time. So it just becomes another example of like know thyself and like, I could admire people for doing certain things, but also recognize that like they need to substantially sacrifice other aspects. Maybe they don't even see that as a sacrifice, and that's what makes them like competitive in that particular domain in a way where it's like, okay, I'm opting not to do that. Excuse me. I know myself well enough to be like, that's not me. It's cool that you're into rockets. Please keep launching the rockets. I will watch the rockets with my kids. But I will not. Actually, I recently read Reentry. Have either of you guys read that book? So
What's the
the
book?
author's it's called Reentry.
Okay.
It's like a more recent history of SpaceX. Actually, the author's now written two histories of SpaceX. One like the formation, and one the kind of reusability period, which is interesting because it's like if you believe that we're entering a second era of space exploration, it's really centered on the second half of SpaceX as a company, like being able to figure out reusability. So very interesting book. But like the common theme is that the people who are dedicated to SpaceX, even as like ICs in effect, are totally dedicated for that period of time.
Hmm.
And they know it. They know that they want it. They know they're doing it for themselves as well. It's not like, oh, I'm getting screwed over by this guy who's, manipulating me, whatever. It's like, no, I know what I'm signing up for. I know that it's a total commitment. I know that I'm going to live in the factory or the warehouse or whatever, for some period of time. And I know that that's short term. Like, very few people are doing this for an extended period of time. And if they are, it's like an intentional sacrifice of other things like family. And like reading that, I'm full of like awe and admiration. And I think even as little as 5 or 10 years ago, it would also have been envy, of that, of them being able to have that experience and me not. Um, but now it can just be awe and admiration from a distance with a self-understanding. That's like that's good for you, man. I'm very proud of you. Very happy for you.
It's nice to have a mission. It's so many companies are like mission driven companies. Our mission is uh, better HR software for writing your 360-degree reviews. So that could be a mission. I don't know if that's as inspiring, but Yeah, I don't know if it's envy for me, but I would love the feeling of being part of that, of being part of something. I think a lot of people want that in some way. And it's really cool that there is this thing that is this company that is literally just expanding the mission of humanity in some direct way. Um, and I know I'm not playing a direct role other than, I'll just be another viewer on YouTube. But Aj, you made a sojourn to actually view one of the rockets, and that's another thing that we can slowly participate in. And I guess Oz, my thought on this is if they offered you a one-way ticket to Mars, where they needed someone to like write some code for them on the Mars colony, would you do it? Are you at all interested in that?
Um, yeah, that's a very complicated question, I
Uh-huh.
think, because it's like, I mean, I've kind of offhandedly mentioned, Elon Musk's comment to my wife of like, uh, I want to die on Mars, hopefully not on impact, because
Yeah,
otherwise,
yeah, yeah,
uh, and the context for other people is that it'd be very expensive to get somebody off Mars. It's like it would not be entirely out of the realm of possibility, but it's like if you're signing up for a mission to go to Mars, you're almost certainly not coming back. Um, and to me, if I didn't have a family, that would actually be very appealing, despite and maybe because of the hostility of Mars. It's like in a way I wouldn't go to Antarctica, even though Antarctica is easier. I wouldn't do a one-way trip at least to Antarctica. I'd do
yeah.
like a cruise to see the penguins or whatever. But Mars, if people are going to Mars and trying to figure out how to survive on Mars, like think of the people who are part of that expedition.
Oh, I mean, that's Red Mars Book One by Kim Stanley Robinson. It's
Right, yeah.
amazing. The first 50 years are going to be great. And then
So it's
once the colonists arrive, shit goes down, is the problem. Once
so
it's
like
not the scientific class.
right, in a kind of self-indulgent way. I feel like the day-to-day experience of being part of that crew, particularly being useful to that crew, like, if I had the arrogance to believe that I could be, and being around these other smart and useful and like driven people, that would be a very exciting thing. But like I said, mentioning it to my wife, it's like just so obvious to her that you would never do anything like that. Um, but I have a wife, I have kids, and so like realistically, that's not something that I would sign up for. Like I've already made those decisions. I decided 10 years ago really to not go to
Go to
Mars.
Mars.
Yeah. So, and like, go to Mars here is a placeholder for like do a massive venture back startup at
Mm,
this point. Yeah,
interesting.
because like it's comparable in a way. Um,
Amar, are
yeah,
you
like
venture backed? Are you bootstrapped, or where are you on that whole
We
burning the
raised
boats thing?
we raised some pre-seed money a few years ago.
Okay.
And frankly, we're in the process of personally ourselves figuring out that question too.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something that a lot of investors want to hear, but it's like the crazy part is like, oh, let's say, you know, this company has some type of exit for 20, 50 million dollars, and that's amazing for us individually. But for seed stage and beyond investors, that's nothing. They want you to like burn all the boats, spend 24/7 on this one problem, right? Yeah, because like from their perspective, they want that one portfolio company to return the fund essentially.
they
And
want you to die on
we're
Mars.
they building HR software for Mars.
I feel like that could be the title for this episode. I think that'll confuse a lot of people.
Yeah.
Building HR software for dying on Mars. We'll workshop that.
This is why, like,
I gotta bounce, gang. I'm hopefully not gonna die on Mars. It's funny to me the like Interstellar. Love that movie so much, and when he's stressed out, he's just the guy's listening to rainfall and stuff like that. The fact that there's no rainfall on Mars, or maybe there is, I don't even know. No water, but
not
I
with that attitude, Charlie.
yeah, I guess we could put a dome and do this stuff. But until there's rain, I don't know if I'm gonna go. But Amar, this is awesome. I wanted to plug your LinkedIn posts. You write these like a founder's diary every week. Can you just tell me about that briefly?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you look at those. I wrote those mostly for
Yeah.
myself and a few friends. I started it because I got annoyed by the posts I was seeing by founders on LinkedIn. It was like extremely like what's the word? It's self-aggrandizing the word. No, is that it?
Sure. Yeah.
That sounds like the right word, like self-promoting to the
Yeah.
extreme. Like it's almost like performative self-reflection, and then be like, oh yeah, and then here's a plug for my little startup or whatever. And it's like, no, I kind of want to just share what it feels like to be doing this. This is the first time I'm doing it. I'm gonna forget what it feels like, and I
Yeah.
want other people to remember or see what it feels like too. So it's been a lot of fun. And honestly, it's like I've met a lot of interesting people through it too, but that hasn't been the purpose of it. It's
Yeah.
just been to have a scratch pad to share publicly.
No, they've been amazing. So yeah, I encourage people to check that out. You may get 200 to 400 new LinkedIn requests based on the usual number of viewers of this podcast, but they're really great. And dude, I'm excited am I a candidate for trying out Malla? Do I have,
Yeah, everyone should
everyone
try
is.
it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm,
It's free to join. Yeah, it's free
okay,
to
cool.
join. So you can just try it out.
Okay, amazing. Well, good catching up. Hopefully I'll see you soon. I'm sorry I have to run now. Our oven isn't working. I just got a text, so I got to go see what's going on there.
You can
Testing each
fix it,
other.
I
Charlie.
can
I
fix
believe
it.
in
I
you.
can
Pop
flip
the
the circuit.
hood.
Here's what I'm hoping. I'm visualizing going down to the breaker, and there's one that looks different, and I'm going to touch that one, and I hope that's it. So wish me luck.
Good luck.
All right. Bye,
Good
y'all.
luck, man.